dropping in. All right, so we are live on YouTube, we are live on TikTok, and today we're going to be talking to you about what most men don't understand about the modern dating landscape and the changes in dynamics. Now, this is going to be a very powerful training. We're going to drop in very deep, and I'm going to go over today, and I want to lay a framework for you over the 10 lessons you need to understand about attraction and the changes in the landscape. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand the things you need to shift and change in order to get the results that you want. And this is going to be a very powerful training. So who is this training for? This training is for you. If you're stuck in the friend zone and you don't know how to build attraction, and you're wanting to start building attraction and you don't know how, or if you go and interact with women and your mind goes blank and you have no idea what to say, then this is for you. If you are someone that is finally ready to break through and try to let go of those society scripts that people have been lying to you, this video is for you. We're going to drop in and it's going to be a very, very powerful training. So something I want to lay into as we go into this video is I want you to understand that the landscape has changed, okay? What worked for your grandfather, what worked for your father, that's not going to work anymore, okay? The landscape has completely changed. The 2025, people are fickle. Things are much more fickle. Social media has changed how we interact. So you need to understand that the landscape has completely changed, and what worked for our grandfathers, what worked for our fathers is not going to work now. I want you to consider this for a second. Never before, let's say in the 50s, was there like dating coaches or relationship coaches. That was absolutely unheard of, astronomical. People would have been like, what the heck are you talking about? But now you can see that there's this whole market under dating and understanding human psychology, because the landscape has completely changed. Before, in the 50s, we were working in traditional values. We were under a different system. Society was much different back then. Think about it. One of your ways to get a woman, to attract a woman, was just to have a bank account, just to have a credit card. Remember, in the 50s, women couldn't get a bank account without being connected to a man. So your value in society, being a provider male, was very attractive. Well, when you think of attraction, one of the key concepts that I want you to understand, attraction isn't logical, okay? I want you to really understand that. Attraction is not logical. So the key fundamental you got to understand, back in the day, in like the 1950s, earlier, one of the things was attraction was logical. You could be a provider male and have a really great life, start a family. This was the nuclear family. Well, society has broken out of that mold, and for good reason, right? Because the feminine was repressed before. Women were repressed. So now it's actually, women have been liberated, and I believe strongly that this liberation with women has liberated the landscape and is calling men to awaken. So no longer can men just be the provider male. No longer can he just have a bank account. Will that create attraction? No, he has to evolve. He has to awaken his consciousness. And I think the pendulum has swung, and now it's up to men to become better, not bitter. And I understand this. Why? Because when I got sober, I finally got sober at one point, and all I could do is drink and do drugs to get at any chance with a woman. But when I got sober, I finally understood what was really blocking me. And I'm going to go over my lessons that I learned over 10 years of studying this stuff and being sober and testing things and working with men and also working with women, and also going on the Vegas Strip and testing a lot of this stuff. Okay, this is where this information's come from. And the key concept that I want you to understand right now is that society has lied to you, okay? What used to work does not work anymore, okay? And you have a choice. You can become bitter or you can become better. And I encourage you to become better. So what I want to do is I want to lean in to the 10 lessons you need to understand about attraction in the modern day landscape. So let's dive in. So the first concept that I need you to understand when it comes to dating, when it comes to attraction, when it comes to man to woman communication, there's a key concept that I need you to understand. And that understanding, by understanding these concepts, is going to dramatically change your dating life. So the first thing that you need to understand when it comes to attraction is, the first thing is you got to understand is energy, okay? The concept here is that Energy is emotions, right? So emotion equals energy in motion, all right? Remember what I said earlier. Attraction is not logical, all right? Attraction is not logical. It's not a logical process, all right? So this is a key fundamental that you have to understand. It's not logical. It's an emotional journey. So the challenge is a lot of guys get stuck in that logical loop. So what happens is when they go, and the first thing you need to understand is neediness kills, okay? It kills attraction. Neediness kills attraction. When you have needy vibes, women have this amazing acute-like sensors, okay? I want you to think about this, right? I want you to imagine a dolphin, right? A dolphin puts out sonar radar when it's swimming, right? It puts out sonar radar and it has this acute sense of awareness to understand what's around it, right? Well, women are the same way. They have this acute sense to energies and shift in subtleties and whether or not you're reacting off her, whether or not you're in your own frame, which we'll go over later in this talk, is that you'll understand the understandings of frame. But she has an acute sense of awareness if you're falling into her frame. So what she needs you to feel is not you going into her world. You need her to come into yours. And so what happens with guys is they get overinvested in a woman. And when that happens, and this is kind of complex, right? Because if you think about it, right, as a man, you're like, well, Matthew, I like this woman. I want to show and display that I like her. But yeah, the challenges with this is that if you do it in a needy way, it absolutely kills attraction because it's a status cue that shows that you don't have options. So the first thing we got to understand is neediness kills attraction. And how does that happen? Well, it happens through wanting approval, okay? When you're looking for approval from your woman or a woman that you're interacting with, and behind the scenes, okay, this is not what you're actually doing, by the way, but I'm just gonna over exaggerate it. But if you're doing something like this behind, like say you think in your mind, you're going, hey, how's it going? But behind the scenes, like, please, oh my God, please like me. I hope you like me. Please, please, I want your approval. Help, help, please, right? It becomes this needy energy. And think about it. Your woman does not want to date a baby, all right? She's got children, or your woman wants children. Your woman wants to date a man, okay? So now, by the way, if that's you and that's happening to you, that makes sense because you've not been taught this stuff, right? A lot of the guys that don't know this information, like if you're like me, grew up without a father, had no role models, and were raised by pretty much women teachers and then didn't see anything. And then this was completely Chinese language to you, foreign language that you couldn't even understand. And so when you're interacting from that place, you've not been taught essentially why that's happening, where that comes from. And that's different from all of us, okay? So this is like case by case. But behind the scenes, if you're interacting from that needy behavior, oh, I hope you approve of me. Will you please approve of me? Like, I really like you, so please, I want you to like me, right? That completely kills attraction. And here's the thing. What happens is when you have no options, when you're in scarcity, this stuff shows immediately, okay? So when you don't have options, that scarcity is basically coming out of your energy field. I remember I was talking about earlier, women have this like acute sense of awareness and so sensitive to this parts of the man and his behavior. When you want to understand attraction, attraction isn't a logical process. It's not a logical process. And attraction comes down to your behavior, okay? It comes down to your behavior, okay? This is all the sub cues, all the things that you're doing, all the subtleties that you're displaying. This is what causes attraction. So when you are in scarcity, now this is a bit of a paradox. One of the things you'll understand about women and you'll understand about attraction, it's not a straight process, okay? It's not a straight line process. It's not if you do X, you get Y result. Remember, attraction isn't logical. It's emotional. So there's no straight line, but there's probabilities, okay? So if you want to think in terms of attraction, think in terms of probabilities. You can increase probabilities. So if you want to think in terms of attraction, it gets communicated through your behavior. And if you have scarcity, that's going to come off of you. So this is this kind of weird place, right, with women, because you have to show that you have options even when you don't have options. All right, in your sub cues, in your behavior. So this is why if you choose to work with me, and what I do when I work with men is I teach them attractive sub cue behaviors, and I teach them how to body language communicate different verbal and nonverbal cues about yourself. So when you're standing there and you're interacting from that needy place, right, she can sense that off you. And worse, and this is what's really difficult, why I got to work a lot. This is why you need coaching when you do this stuff, which is quite hard to do through YouTube or digital because there's no feedback loop. When I work with men, there's a feedback loop so that I can interact with them and I can basically call out the cues that they're displaying in a kind way. I'm not trying to just like rip on my clients. No, I invite them in a kind way to understand how they're portraying themselves. Or if a behavior that they display, I let them know how a woman would internalize that, how a woman would see that behavior, right? Because attraction comes down to behavior. So this is a very important concept to understand. And women detect this instantly, right? So women can instantly detect, women can detect desperation. So when you have desperate energy, I can remember when I was first learning this stuff, when you have desperate energy, women can really feel that off you. Now, the challenge is if you're a guy that has never really had much results, it's going to be quite hard to understand this stuff fully because you're going, well, how do I actually act if I've never been with anyone? Well, that's why you have to understand this stuff. This is why you got to start really diving deep into this stuff. Whereas before, you could have desperate energy in the 50s and that didn't matter because all you had to do is show your bank account card, right? Again, coming back to that in the 1950s, women weren't able to have bank accounts in the 40s. They had to be married or come in a relationship with a man to get a bank account. That was your cue of attraction. But in 2025, that doesn't work. So what do we got to do? Is we got to learn this key concept. All right, this is how if there's a way to understand your behavior, we need to learn what's called non-attachment behavior. Okay, we have to understand non-attachment behavior. So that's going in with intent, detached from outcome. Okay, so we're coming in for a fun, casual conversation. We're in this giving energy, but we don't need anything. Okay. Ironically, even though let's say there's a woman that you're fancy or a woman that you're interested in, you go in with intent detached from outcome. So that's the first point that I need you to understand is that neediness kills. Next, we need to understand the friend zone. What is the friend zone and why does the friend zone happen? Right? Why does this happen? Why are you constantly getting into the friend zone? Well, the first thing you need to consider is that you can't nice your way to attraction. All right. You can't just be like, oh, to attraction. Yeah. You can't just be over pleasantly doing gestures and being this over pleasantly nice guy to think that you're just going to attract her. All right. This isn't going to happen. All right. Too many guys are afraid of what's called polarization. They're afraid. And by the way, this is people in general, right? Like in 2020, we're in, or 2025, we're in the landscape of this right now. And this is why you can separate yourself in a very powerful way by understanding this information, because you can really separate yourself in the dating landscape. And one of the things that happens is what happens is they get stuck in what's called the nice guy trap. And that's because they're afraid of owning who they are. And you're going to see this throughout this talk today, that you really want to start understanding to own who you are. You want to own your energy. And if you're constantly falling in this nice guy trap, what starts to happen is you're not going to build polarity. And polarity is the foundation, one of the foundations that a woman needs to feel in order to feel attraction. If she doesn't feel polarity, what starts to happen in her body is she unconsciously allocates you to being her friend, right? Because there causes no spark. There's no spark of attraction. And if you think about that, let's think about this for a sec. When we say spark, what does that actually mean? When you say, oh, there's no spark, or the woman says, oh, there's no spark, what is she actually saying? What she's actually saying is there's no strong polarity. She wants to be in her feminine, But in order for there to be a spark, you need to be in your masculine. That means there needs to be a strong masculine energy. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be overly alpha or misogynistic or this type of things. No, not at all. In fact, quite often I'm a very kind guy. I'm quite gentle. That's why I think it's called a gentleman, because I'm actually quite of a gentle guy. Like, I'm a kind guy. I think if I was an animal, I'd be an elephant, or a big whale or something like this, right? So I'm not talking you have to be like this assertive person that you're not. No, but you need to be strong in your energy field. So you got to own that, own your kindness, right? And also have boundaries around that too, right? And having boundaries around that energy that you own, then this becomes very powerful. But the challenge is a lot of guys are what's called hiding at their center. And when they fall into the nice guy trap, they're hiding at their center. And this is really what women can detect, and it becomes very unattractive. So when they do that, what starts to happen is that there's no romantic equity. Okay. Women have no buy-in. There's no buy-in for them. There's no reason for her to be attracted to you because you're not creating any romantic tension. There's no romantic tension between you and her. There's no spark because you're not owning your masculine energy. And by the way, in 2025, there's a big push to make you not have your masculine energy. And this is something that we as men have to pierce through. I think that what we're looking for is the awakened masculine energy. And this means you're more in tune with your emotions now, right? It's not that you're an overly emotional guy. That's okay. By the way, I'm highly emotional, but you own that and you direct it, right? It's actually very powerful if you have that and in tune with your emotions as well. Some men teach that, that's for sure. Some men teach just repress your emotions. But I guess that's more of like a stoic philosophy, and that's great. By the way, you know yourself best. You got to work with what yourself's best. But I typically work with guys that don't really resonate with that, and I really want to enforce guys to be their authentic self. I think that's important, and let that version of you out, which is very important. And so one of the things we can do by basically going over that is we can use what's called polarity. So by using polarity, this becomes very powerful, right? And you start using this polarity to start creating that spark, right? So you have the feminine energy, you have the masculine energy. And when you have those two poles, when they meet, that's what creates that spark. So we're looking for that spark. And it's like, think about it when you're charging your battery of your car, right? You have a positive and a negative, and if you ever put them together, it creates that spark. Well, this is the same thing with attraction. We need that spark there. Now, by the way, if you look at a body, we have basically a masculine side, which is on our right, and a feminine side, which is on our left, right? So within ourselves, we have masculine and feminine energy within inside ourselves. And then there's the spectrum within that, right? But with men and women, we also have different energies within us, right? Masculine and feminine. So when you want to create that polarity, we want to create that masculine energy. This is what becomes very powerful. And you want to be powerful in your field, which becomes very, very attractive. And then number three, the third thing I need you to understand about the modern day landscape is that money buys nothing really, okay? Nowadays, money doesn't really buy anything, okay? It's not really building much attraction. The thing with money is it can give you access, right? So I work with a lot of guys actually that are, pretty financially well off. Actually, they're very financially well off. They're quite stable, but money itself can't actually buy you attraction. Okay. So what starts to happen is if you depend on money, what starts to happen is you get gifts are basically create dependence. Okay. It creates dependence. And that dependence now, she just sees you as like someone that buys her things, right? And she's not really that attracted to you. So one of the things you have to understand is that gifts won't buy attraction, okay? Just constantly giving her gifts, this isn't going to create real attraction. And by the way, if you think about it for a sec, like, do you really want to attract someone through gifts? And that's the reason that that person's attracted to you. because what starts to happen is, if that is what will happen, is she's going to she takes, and then she leaves, right? So now she's basically in your field, but now she just takes you, right? She just, okay, keep buying me things, right? But then she just leaves. The reason why she just keeps accepting you buying things is because one of the key fundamentals is that you basically are just a guy that didn't create any feelings in her. So now what she's doing is that she's just receiving the gift. And then when you stop giving her gifts, then all of a sudden she's not attracted anymore. So this is important. And then this is a fundamental that you have to understand. Money can't buy attraction. You can't buy attraction through money. You can buy time, right? You can buy time. You can get her to hang out with you longer, but you can't buy attraction. There's no attraction that comes with just by buying her attraction. Attraction comes from creating an emotional experience with her. So this is a fundamental that you have to understand, is you can't just buy attraction. So what can you do instead? One of the key things that you can do is you can invest in experiences. Okay? You can invest in experiences. And by investing in experiences, what you're really doing is investing in experiences in time and creating emotional connections. And when I say invest in experiences, what I'm really saying is what I'm really saying is that one of the things is you got to invest in her emotional experience, not in actually investing in her, like buying her dinners and all this type of stuff. Oftentimes, I recommend that you go for coffee dates. Like you should be not spending anything over $20, like even less. Like spend your time on the experience, getting to know her, invest in the emotional connection, see if you're compatible with each other, get to know each other. This is where you really want to be spending your time. So this is a key thing. This is an area that guys overemphasize, and they lose the idea of basically, okay, they're just putting way too much weight on this. And then the next one is this is key in 2025, is the value flips instantly. Okay, so the value flips instantly. What do I mean by that? Well, what happens is basically, like I was talking about earlier, women have an acute sense of awareness. She has an acute sense of awareness. And if she picks up any needy behavior, any sort of overinvestment behavior, if you overtext too much, what starts to happen is the value flips instantly, right? It goes from hot to cold really quickly. Women are really flippant. And that's because that's the feminine energy, especially in 2025. So one of the things is there's in 2025 now, there's no grace period. Okay. So attraction can go very hot very quickly, but also attraction can go very cold very quickly. So there's no grace period right now. This is why men are being forced to learn this stuff, right, at a very high level, because there's no grace period. And then reactions reveal neediness. So if you're constantly reacting to her, she's going to feel that, right? She's going to pick that up off of you. She's going to feel that off of you. And she's going to see that you're constantly reacting to her. And this isn't going to be attractive, right? So one of the things is what we have to understand about the modern dating landscape is that it's not really forgiving anymore. So it's not forgiving. Okay, it's really not forgiving like it used to be. So the thing is men are being called upon in a way that they've never been called upon before, right? You're being called upon in order to step up, essentially, in the attraction game. So this is important to understand. So the key concept you want to understand about, because this flips so much, is you need to understand how to maintain frame. Okay, you need to understand how to maintain frame in any dynamic. Basically, frame is in any dynamic, one person is setting the underlying tone for the interaction. So you need to set the underlying tone in the interaction. So if you're going in this, wavy behavior and you're sub-communicating and you're anxious and shaking inside yourself, if that's actually happening, that's okay, because you're going to learn how to get through that. But she's going to sense that off of you, and she's going to sense that in the underlying tone of the interaction. And basically, you're not able to maintain frame. So this is something important that you want to understand. And number 5, this is important, is actually what happens is when you challenge, challenges actually build attraction. Okay? They actually build attraction. When you challenge her, when you maintain your frame and you challenge her, it actually builds attraction, which is pretty, it's a powerful place to be. And that means you're not constantly agreeing with her. That means you're not constantly pandering. That doesn't mean you're just constantly challenging because this is a technique you do. No, you have your viewpoints of the world. And sometimes what happens is if you have a very strong frame, what will happen is sometimes she'll come into your world because you're the man and she wants you to lead, right? So what happens when you don't challenge, when you don't have that challenging energy, is basically what starts to happen is she doesn't see you as a compatible partner, right? So what you want to do is, if you're overly available, this kills the pull. Okay, so there's a push and pull in attraction, and when you start to be overly available and overly open, what starts to happen is that kills attraction, right? So it's important that you understand that this is an area of your life that you're going to want to work on. And when you're doing this, mystery in your life creates interest, right? So this is where I talk about with my clients, I talk about this. It's called lifestyle design, right? When you understand lifestyle design, this is where you have exciting things to talk about, interests, things that you're interested in. And this can become very, very powerful because this is a lever point that you can pull when you're using attraction. And one of the things what you want to do is it's something that you want to do is maintain a healthy distance. All right. So you don't want to overly text all the time. You don't want to be overly available. You want to maintain a healthy distance from her. This is important because sometimes what happens if you're overly available, and this doesn't mean you have to just fake this. No, this means just like if she texts, match her texting style, right? You'll notice that most girls don't just text back right away, right? Because they got things going on, right? Just like you do. You have things going on, right? So this is important to understand, to have this as well. And the main thing next to understand is number 6 is status creates attraction, okay? This is a big one that guys mistake, is they forget about how important status is. Now, what do I mean by this? You don't have to be like the top guy in the room or something like this. This isn't what I mean by this. No, remember what I was talking about earlier? This was at the beginning of this, is that your behavior is what creates attraction, right? How you hold yourself, how you communicate, how you hold your body language. This is all cues of status, right? These are sub cues. So what starts to happen is this is what is creating attraction at an unconscious level to her, okay? So this is a fundamental that you have to understand, is that attraction is communicated through your behavior, and your behavior is an important element to your communication. And 93% of communication is nonverbal, right? So this is why the logic doesn't work. Okay, doesn't work. It doesn't create attraction. Okay, logic does not create attraction. And the reason for that is because emotions drive the decisions, okay? Your emotions drive your decisions, right? And it drives her decisions. It's an emotional process, right? Attraction is an emotional process. So this is important. So one of the ways that you can do this, one of the ways that you can basically do this is have social proof, right? And a lot of guys, what starts to happen when they first start learning this stuff and they start to understand this stuff is they basically have no social proof. They have not many, maybe they don't have much of a friend group, they don't have much of a network going on. And what starts to happen is basically they have no social proof. And that's a sub cue that you're maybe not someone that might be compatible. So, what do we want to do? We want to be able to create fun experiences. Okay. So, we want to be able to create fun experiences. This is important. All right. She's wanting to have fun. Okay. If you ask most women, what are the things that they want? They want to be able to laugh with someone. All right. They want to be able to have fun and laugh with someone. So, when you create fun experiences, this doesn't mean you have to do something crazy. No, you could just have go fun with her. You can have a fun experience with her, and that means different things to different people, right? But you want to go out and have fun experiences. And the next thing that you want to understand is that the swagger, number 7, swagger wins. Okay. So having swagger is important. Okay. So what do I mean by that? That means your unique style, something that is yours, something that is unique to you. All right. Because this is important. You want, again, coming back to this, you want to own your own energy. This is very important. So this is why nice guys finish last. Okay. Because they have no style. They haven't owned their style. They haven't found their style. They haven't worked on their style. And so what starts to happen is that they're just basically themselves, which is not worked on any of their style, right? So this is why it's important to work on your style. And when you have this, now this might take time for this to basically awaken within inside of you. But one of the things you want to have is boldness creates attraction. So being bold creates attraction. And this is powerful. This is a very, very powerful. And you need to have presence with this, right? And so your value has presence. Okay, your value has presence. And by having this can be a powerful moment to understand that by being bold, it creates attraction, and then your values have presence, which is powerful. So this is why this is important, that you need to own your own energy. This is important. You need to own your own energy. Okay. You need to own your own energy, which is important, right? And this leads to why presence matters. Okay. How you hold yourself, how you act, how you are in front of people. This is important. Okay. Having presence and having a strong presence is very important. Okay. Especially in this day and age. And it's something that most people shy away from, but it's important, right? And so what starts to happen, what I see with my clients is that for a majority of their life, what's happened is they just focused on their career and they did what they thought they would work, right? They focused on their career. They spent all their time learning maybe programming or learning software engineering, these types of things, or maybe grinding away in business. And what starts to happen is that process, they never learned what creates real attraction. And that grinding, constantly grinding, kills the vibe. So when they're grinding away, it kills the vibe. So they have no swagger. There's nothing that is exciting for them. They're not presenting themselves. They have basically no style. And when they're constantly grinding, they get caught in this like robotic mode. And that robotic mode basically stops them from basically creating any sort of attraction. And when they're in that robotic mode, it's not attractive and it kills the vibe. And then what happens is, because they're in this like logical robotic state, what starts to happen when they're in their interaction is they try to control the interaction, and it repels women. So this kind of grinding and controlling energy, it basically, what starts to happen is it repels women. It doesn't make them attractive. What starts to happen is then when they're working on their day-to-day, like say they're computer programming, or you might be a computer programmer, and you're like focusing on logic all the time, then all of a sudden you go into a venue or an event, and now you're just interacting in logical mode, right? And so what starts to happen is you basically have no presence. So what we need to do is we need to practice presence. We need to practice presence. And by doing this, what will happen over time is we'll be able to command more of our energy, right? What we were talking about earlier is you need to start to own your own energy. And when you can do that, and you start owning that energy field and that energetic signature, it becomes very attractive. Which goes to number 9 is we need to maintain our energy. By maintaining our energy, what's just to happen is we can hold a steady conversation. We can have a bit more of a fluid interaction. And so what starts to happen is if we can't maintain our energy, what starts to happen is we fall into our default mode and we go into what's called our comfort zones, right? And when we go into comfort, that kills attraction. And that kills attraction. So one of the things we want to do is we want to maintain our energy. And when this happens, what starts to happen is if we get into that comfort, what starts to happen is these things called slippages. So we start to slip, and those slippage, basically what's happened is it destroys polarity. And now we start to have, basically in these interactions, we start to have these energy leaks. And she can start feeling these energy leaks, and that's why it's basically not attractive. So the other thing we want to understand is lifestyle matters, okay? How you live your life and how you choose to live your life is important, right? Your lifestyle matters. It plays an important part. So this is why we need to maintain frame, okay? You'll see this often. This is very important, especially in 2025, is to maintain frame. It's very important to learn and understand the underlying tones and how you're going to direct the interaction and who leads the interaction between the conversation between you and hers, having that strong frame. And here's the last and final one you want to understand. You want to lead the vulnerability. Okay, you want to lead the vulnerability. And by leading vulnerability, what you're really doing is you're leading the conversation. And there's a way to do this. Women are looking for inner strength. Actually, that's what that sign means right there. Inner strength, emotional depth, and vulnerability. And so vulnerability is a very important part of the equation. And this weakness, it's not coming from a weak place. It's that hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm facing, and this is how it's affecting me, and this is how I'm working through it, right? Do you feel the energy of that? This is what I'm facing, this is what I'm working through, and this is how I'm getting through it, right? Instead of just being lost in it and constantly in it, which is okay, that's fine. If you need to work through some of that stuff, that's good, that inner stuff. That's why you want to get a coach, you want to be a part of a men's group, a men's community. But if you're talking to a woman in terms of attraction, it's that place where this is what I'm facing, I'm in the process of facing it, this is what I'm doing to move through it. It's basically solution orientated, right? So when you come from that weakness place, what starts to happen is it kills attraction. So we want to be able to face and own our things, right? Own our inner world. And this is why that inner work is also so important. We actually call it's what's called inner game. And it's such an important element to start owning in this journey of attraction, which is important. And one of the things that you can find yourself in, and I see this a lot with guys, is you start to overshare, okay? Going into the oversharing mode, right? She wants to get to know you, she wants to connect to you, but let her do the sharing, right? You can lead with the vulnerability, but let her do the sharing. Don't be oversharing and just opening up your whole closet to her and letting her into your world. Like, have some back and forth, right? This is why you need actually to learn communication skills, honestly, because a lot of people don't understand basic communication skills. And then when they get into these interactions, especially men, it's okay. Women are meant to do this, right? But you're a man and you're trying to create attraction. So when you're a man trying to create attraction, oversharing is really not getting you into that place where it's really going to be that great. And the main thing with vulnerability is the reason why is she needs leadership. Okay, she needs leadership. She needs you to lead, right? So this is why I talk about inner strength, right? Having that inner strength, which is very important. And so what you need to do is you need to own your struggles. Okay, you got to own your struggles. You got to own what you're going through, and you got to face it. And that's okay. It's okay to have a difficult day. You're a human being. It shows you're human, but own them. Own what you're going through, right? If you're going through a difficult time, you got to own that, right? This is who I am. This is what I'm working through right now, right? And you might give her permission to actually go through what she's going through. But the main thing is when you're going through what you're facing, you want to own that. So these are the 10 lessons about attraction right now that you need to understand in the modern day landscape, because it's very important that you understand these. And once you go through them and start fleshing them out, what I want you to do is think about where are you in this and what aspect are you in. Now, if this is of interest to you, you want to dive deeper, I offer private coaching. So if you want, DM me or click the link below and join my authentic attraction course, where we dive a lot deeper into a lot of these concepts and go really, really far into this to really get you to start understanding this. And this is very, very powerful. So that's the end of this live. I hope you have a fantastic day.